I'm gonna show you the chess game between Abasov and Gukesh in FIDE Candidates 2024, round number 5. Let's begin on E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight F6, spread trope defense, D4, Knight takes D4, and then Bishop D3, D3, D5, D takes E5, and then Knight C5, Bishop E2, Bishop E7, Castles kingside, Rook E1, C6, Knight BD2, Knight BD7, H3, A5, and then Knight B3, and then F6, and then it takes F6, and then it takes F6, and then Knight takes F6, and then Bishop E3 attacking the Knight on C5, Knight C E4, Knight B D2, and then A4, Knight takes A4, Knight takes A4, then A3, Bishop C5, Bishop D3, Bishop takes E3, and then Rook takes E3, Queen F6, C3, 6, C3, Bishop F5, and then Queen to E2, Bishop, Knight to D6, and then Bishop takes F5, Knight takes F5, mistake. The best move is Queen takes F5. That's the best move. So let's continue on. Knight takes F5, then Rook to E6, Queen F7, and then Rook E1, and then H6, Queen C2, 6, Queen C2, Queen to D7, and then C4, and then D4, and then C5, and then Queen F7, and then Rook to E4, and then Queen to D5, then Rook to E5 attacking the Queen on D5, and then Queen F7, mistake. The best move is D3. That is the best move. So let's continue. On Queen F7, then Rook 5 E4, Queen to D5, and then Rook to E5, and then Queen F7, mistake. The best move is D3 again, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on Queen F7, and then Rook 1 E4, Rook A D8, then Rook F4 attacking the Knight on F4, D3, blocking the Queen from F5. So let's continue on. Queen takes A4, and then Queen to A2, and then King to H2, G6, and then Queen to B4, Queen to F7, Rook to E1, and then Rook F E8, and then Rook F E4, and then Rook takes E4, and then Rook takes E4, and then Rook to G5, and then Knight to D2, then Knight to G7, and then King to G1, mistake. The best move is Rook to F4, attack the Queen on F6, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on. King to G1, mistake, and then Knight to E6, good move, or bad move for me. Rook to E3, and then Knight takes C5, Queen to C4, and then Knight to E6, mistake. The best move is G5, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on. Knight to E6, mistake, and then Rook takes D3, B5, and then Queen to C3, Knight to F4, Rook to E3, Rook to G5, mistake. The best move is Rook to D3, if it take, and then Knight to E2. Wow, that's the fork, my fellow chessers, as you can see, my fellow chessers. So let's continue. What if he didn't take? Queen C2 is the best move, my fellow chessers. So let's continue. On Rook to G5, Knight to e4, mistake. X. The best move is queen takes c6. That is the best move, and concentration on rook to f5. And then what's the best move? So let's continue on knight to e4. Rook takes g2, check, and then king to h1, knight to g5. Good move. So knight to f6, knight to f6, brilliant move, my fellow jazzers. And then knight takes f6, and then king to g2. King takes g2, and then knight to g5, 4, as you can see. Then queen takes c6, and then knight takes e3, and then f takes e3, and then queen to f5, good move. And then b3, h5, a4, b takes a4, and then b takes a4, and then queen to g5, check, and then king f2, queen f5, check, king g2, and then king g5, check, king f2, king f5, check, and then king e2, g5, mistake. The best move is king to h8 or king to h7 or king to g7. That is the best move, my fellow chessers. Let's continue on g5, mistake. So e4 attacking the queen on f5, and then queen takes 5, and then queen takes h3, and then queen to g6, check, and then king to h8, and then king to h6, and then king to g8, then queen takes g5, and then king to h8, king to h6, queen to h6, and then king to g8, and then queen to g5, check, king to h8, and then a5, mistake. h4, good move. Queen h6, check, and then king to g8, then queen to g6, king to h8, and then king a6, pawn to a6, and then queen to h2, queen to e3, king to e3, queen to h3, check, king to e2, and then queen to h2, king to d3, and then queen to h3, and then king to c4, and then queen to c4, and then queen to c8, check. Ooh. Queen to d5, queen to d8, and then queen to d6, and then queen to a5, then king to e6, and then h3, then king f7, and then queen to a2, check, queen to e6, and then queen takes e6, and then king takes e6, h2, a7, h1 check, and then a8 check, and then check, this is check, okay, my fellow jazzers, and then king to g7, and then queen to a7, king to h6, and then queen to e3, king to h5, mistake. The best move is king to h7, my fellow jazzers. So let's continue on, king to h5, and then king to f5, mistake. The best move is queen to c5, check, and then that's the best move. So let's continue on, king to f5, queen to f1, mistake. The best move is queen to g2. That is the best move, my fellow jazzers. So let's continue on, queen to f1, check, and then queen to f4, queen to b5, and then queen to e5, good move, and then queen to d7, then queen d7, then king f6 at the same time, check, my fellow jazzers, and then king to h4, and then queen to g5. Abasov resigned that game, my fellow chessers. Why? Because if we continue the game, then king to h3, what's the best move? Queen to f5, as you can see, queen to queen, my fellow chessers, the same time. No, if you take, and then as you can see, this or this, and then what's next? That's the game. Okay, king h7.